Hello, welcome to Introspection with Jeff. I hadn't been planning to make a video like this about this topic until about an hour ago. I was watching Top Gun Maverick, and it made me recall a conversation I had with somebody, kind of an old friend who's we're friends now, last night. And I thought it would pertain to many of you. Wondering how many of you had gone through a similar situation. On this channel, I talk about self-assessment, and I assess my own self. I introspect into what drives me as a person, what motivates me, how I could have done better in life, or how I can improve as a person, basic life goals. So, all right. This friend I was talking with last night, I had met him in this organization. I'll keep it vague because I'm going to talk about somebody in particular, and I'm going to say not really nice things about this person. So I want to keep a sense of anonymity. I'll just call it an organization that I grew up in. It's not a cult. It's normal. I just want to keep it vague. So I had grown up. It's not school. It was I'll call it an after-school activity that everybody of my kinship is expected to go through. I had gone through up until graduation year. And after that graduation year, I stopped going. I would go periodically for certain events, certain annual events, but I didn't, it wasn't part of my life anymore, really. Although I still identified with it proudly. And then I went into college, and I still identified with this group. And after college, I was becoming lonely. And I've mentioned Punky Brewster before. Punky Brewster is someone that I had had a crush on. I might actually talk a little bit more and get a little bit more into talking about Punky Brewster in this video. I haven't in the past. I've mentioned a little bit about her. Punky Brewster is not her real name. I'm debating whether I should mention it as a crush. I certainly looked to her in school, and there were other girls in school, and I thought of her as very popular and as in a certain clique. And it's a clique that I would not be able to, I'm sorry if I just got dressed. Sorry if my collar, I'm a little disheveled. I was really eager to talk about this. So I had thought of her as out of my league, as with girls in general in school. But senior year, I opened up, and I hadn't planned on necessarily giving this Valentine's Day poem to her. I just wanted to open up. I'd written something nice. It was a long poem, several pages, and I wanted to give it to somebody special, so I brought it into school, and I had it on hand. And early on in the morning, one of the early morning periods, she was there sitting. There was an empty seat, and then in front of her in this class, in front of me was her in this class, and I figured this makes sense. I should give it to her. We had gone to school together since 4th grade. In fact, something later on she reminded me of recently in the last year. We were talking on the phone, and she reminded me that she switched to that school the same year that I did. That's really interesting. Kind of a nice coincidence. Um, so I I I was very excited. Might as well talk about this too. I was very happy, and I was open. I felt open and exhilarated that I can finally share these creative energies and this verve and zest. And I would give her poetry, which I had never written really before, aside from maybe one assignment in school sometime years earlier. And I would show her drawings, and I would try to impress her. Primarily, it was to impress her. Like with women in general, I try to impress, and impressing and conveying my abilities, kind of a mark of the best will earn the best, type of mindset I have. I figure if I can do my best, I will demonstrate my worthiness, and she'll be attracted to that. And despite her smiling and sometimes receiving it and saying thanks, I I couldn't I couldn't be able to set a time down to talk with her. Even though I tried, I would make calls and she wasn't there, and I guess she was avoiding me or something like that. I don't know. And she's given an explanation last year, but I don't think that's a full story. She was, in some sense, apologetic. Well, in some sense, she was apologetic last year when we were talking on the phone and we were talking about these things. And I wished very much that we could explore that further so I could get some answers, because for about 20 years, I was wondering, and I wanted answers very badly to explain what had been going on, and I couldn't understand why she just wasn't open and wasn't talking with me, or taking an effort to talk with me. Okay, so things didn't work well at the end of senior year. We graduated, and so that left an emptiness in my heart, and I tried to fill it with other friends, a lot of times past classmates and acquaintances. I reached out to them, and I wrote letters, and sometimes it worked out, and sometimes for a while we would have a friendship and we would stay in contact. And so I still had this feeling I wanted to date, and I had never gone on a date before. I was lacking in a lot, and I'm still lacking in a lot. So my mom suggested that I go back to this organization, and she said that she had read about there being a singles group within the organization. So I went back, and I went back on a weekly basis. That's when they met, on a weekly basis. And I enjoyed that aspect of it, and I kept going, but it soon turned out that there was no singles group. So that's where I met this other friend, this other person who's much older. He was in his 50s. At the time, he was about 30 years roughly older than I am, than I was. So he would still be about 30 years older than I am. So we were still friends, and that's not the person I want to talk about. He's been loyal. He was the one that I was talking with last night, and it was a good long conversation, several hours, and he wanted me to be attracted to him. He swings that way. He wanted me to be attracted to him, and I'm not attracted to men. So, although I wanted to still remain friends with him, and I was very happy on the one hand to be opening his mind up. he had grown up in an environment that was very restrictive. He'll come right out and say it was very restrictive and regulated, and I can sense he would probably himself say that he's still going through trauma about that. It's amazing, and it's good that I'm talking about it on this channel. That we carry with us traumas from childhood, and it unfortunately may take us an entire lifetime to work through those traumas. That's a good reason, well, one of many, as to, there are many reasons why I'm interested in television and film and entertainment in particular, in general, but film and television in particular, because it's a way of cathartically experiencing more than one lifetime's worth of experiences. I don't know how many people recognize that. It's one of the most important things in our society is storytelling and narrative, because it's not just entertainment, it's a matter of working through problems and learning how to deal with situations and experiences. I'm about to tear up right now. So he began, fortunately he had been primed a little bit before I met him, so he was more open. He was still jaded, but he was open-minded, and he was receptive too. He was happy and open-minded about these new things I was introducing to him. But it still takes effort. It's like the wheel had been wound so tightly, and when I met him, the wheel was loosened, and it just takes spinning. It just takes effort to spin it up. But after a while, I felt the strain of having to spin that wheel to get it loosened up more. And sometimes I wasn't receiving a lot in return, but I was still devoted, and I was still loyal, and I was happy that his wheel was loosening up. So at some point, he would drive me over because I didn't have access to transportation aside from a bus, and these were on weekends. It was a weekly thing on weekends, so maybe some of you can figure out what organization I'm talking about. So he would drive me there and drive me back. So at some point he didn't pick me up, and I reassessed why I was still going to that organization, and I found that I was draining myself by speaking up and sharing my intellectual ideas, and I had done a lot of research about this organization, and I feel it's part of me. Like, I identify very strongly with the overall worldwide organization, but this chapter, I'll say, it was draining. I think they weren't appreciating what I knew and what I was talking about. Before I get into the man that I'm going to talk about, I want to finish up about this person I was talking with yesterday. So we basically didn't talk. The friendship essentially went dormant. And later on, at an annual event, I went back after years of just not going there. And I tried to talk with him once, and he was in the lobby. He was talking with somebody else that I knew, a mutual friend between both of us. And from what I remember, he just didn't look at me. So I took that as he felt uncomfortable, and so I didn't want to cause him discomfort, so I simply stopped trying to get his attention and say hi. Maybe comment below, do you think I did the right move? Do you think I made the right decision? So then it was many years after that, I'll say it. This past year, I've begun cross-dressing some more, seriously cross-dressing in the spring of last year, essentially, or maybe prior year, I think the prior before that, seriously making an effort into it. And so he, when he heard about that last year, he thought, well, no, I don't want to put words, I don't want to presume what he was thinking. He became curious. He heard about it through some other friend, because I had sent pictures to a friend, and it was shared with another friend. So, and I'm okay with that. So that friend told this man, that I had been cross-dressing. So the man I was talking about, we stopped. The friendship became dormant. He thought, I'm presuming he put together trans in an overall melange. There's trans, cross-dressing, drag queen, queer, questioning, all sorts of different things, all kind of collect into a bunch. In many people's minds, they kind of form into a melange of something. So I'm presuming that he didn't know exactly what to think about the cross-dressing, but just seemed, was open-minded and was curious. So that's what I presume. So I think I reached out to him. We made contact again, and we're now talking, and it's nice. I'm happy about that. I'm happy we're talking again. And this is something else. Maybe you could comment below. During that dormant period, he went through he worked through a lot of traumas from childhood, and he grew up to some extent. He evolved. He grew up. Maybe a better word for it is he evolved in many ways. So last night we were talking about many things and resolving some issues and questions and so forth. And I talked about my mom's death and so forth. And so I decided to bring up this man who had been the leader of this organization since my childhood. In other words, when I joined the group as a child, he was the leader of it for quite a long while. And quite such a long time that when I went back, even after graduating college, I'll put some dates to this. I would have joined around 1988, and he was still the leader of the organization in 2002 when I came back after graduating. I'd been looking for a singles group, or I just wanted some companionship, female companionship, and so he was still the leader when I came back in 2002, and then I think it was like 2010 or 2008, something like that, when he was no longer leader and somebody else stepped in, somebody else was hired and came in and became the leader. Okay, I want to talk about this man. Growing up, first of all, it was a huge chapter. There were a lot of people there. And I'll say they're family, so it's not just a youth group or whatever. It's a whole chapter. There were many families, and I didn't know much about him personally. The other people in the group gave me an impression of being wealthy or higher tier economically. They were probably middle class or upper middle class, but from my vantage point, I was I was low. I wasn't impoverished, but I was living with my mom, and we didn't have a car. We didn't have certain amenities that people take for granted. And I saw these amenities in them, and they were taken as the norm. Okay, this is important. This factors into what I'm going to explore. Um, Despite that, he always he always treated me with respect growing up. We didn't have much contact, but he he would smile sometimes when I did something well. Um, so after college, there was a period where I was struggling to find work. I didn't have a car. I I had 2 degrees from college simultaneously. Like, I mean, that's I was going part time to college, to Syracuse University, and earned 2 bachelor's degrees. In one of them in a pretty good school. Well, I mean, both are good schools, but I mean one particularly good school. I'm not sure if it's nationally renowned or not, but it's recognized. I hope so. Anyway, so it was tough finding work because I didn't have these resources. In my life, it's been resources, lack of resources, lack of resources. So I liken myself to Luke Skywalker in Star Wars. He had the potential, and he came from, his father had been a Jedi. And I think I've talked about this in earlier videos. My mom had been a member of Mensa. My dad had been a member of Mensa. Her brother was a member of Mensa. And sometimes she's remarked that I'm sometimes smarter in certain areas than she is. I mean, it's really sad. I mean, I wish I could have been more. And I'm making these videos so that if I don't amount to anything, at least I'll have explained who I am, and my beliefs and my personality at least will be conveyed sometime if I pass on somehow. So after college, I went back and I was struggling, and I saw him as the leader of this organization. I mean, this chapter, and in a position like that, any leader in a position like that must be doing networking or facilitating networking. So I simply mentioned that I'm looking for work, and could he help? I mean, there are other families, there are other people there. He knows people. Maybe I'm just looking for a job. I'm not looking for anything in particular. I just want like a steady job. I know I can do some type of work. A college educated, 2 degrees from a good school. It should amount for something. I just want a paycheck and self-esteem and self-worth, and that factors into my admiration for Madonna, and at that point still my crush on Madonna was very strong at that point. I was working on rewriting a screenplay to impress her, and I've talked about that before. As a matter of fact, aside from my intro video, my first 3 or 4 or 5 videos are about that Madonna movie project. Something I may never be able to accomplish, but I'm planning on season 2, as I get this gear up and get a better look for my YouTube channel. I'll be able to at least explain in more depth, with good editing, what the movie would have been like. All right, so with all this potential, I didn't receive any comment back from him. There was no sense of help. He didn't step forward. He didn't seem to offer me any help. Except one time he mentioned, there's the liquor, a nearby liquor store is looking for a job, looking to fill a job. So I went and did. I took like 2 buses to get over there, and then 2 buses back just for the one interview, and I didn't get the job. And I told him I didn't get the job, and he said, "Oh well," essentially, "Oh well." So, all right. So then, a few months after meeting this other man that I'd been talking to last night, who believed in me deeply and saw, he really liked me and admired me. The the leader called us into his private office just after the weekly event, and he opened up by offering me to go through counseling, and then he mentioned drugs, and I didn't know what to say. Like, I kept very calm, especially in that situation. I kept very calm because I didn't want to give off any impression that I was nervous or in any way angered by or frustrated, even the slightest. So I kept very calm, and from what I understand, from what I remember, my friend talking about, describing this, he was holding himself in from just like going at the guy. So, all right, I'll go through the emotions that I felt. First of all, I asked, like, why would you recommend that? And he said, you went to a good school. I can't remember exactly how he phrased it, but he said something like, do you know how privileged you are to have been able to go to this school and to earn good grades at this school? Now, why can't you be able to find a long-term job? And, all right, I felt like I'll just come right out and say now. I didn't say it at the time, but in my mind I was thinking, you moron, you bleeping, a whole bunch of asterisks, signs, and keyboard strokes. I went to you for help. I feel like that moment in Rocky, the first Rocky movie, where this he had gone to this, I'll say coach, 10 years prior, and now that he has a chance to have a bout with a world heavyweight champion, the coach comes to him and offers to be his manager, and Rocky lets out and says, yeah, my apartment stinks. Yeah, sure it stinks. Go here. You want to see my life? I went to you 10 years ago asking for help, asking, for coaching or whatever, and you didn't do anything. So essentially, nuts to you. You come here now? So I felt like that, something like that. Like, I came to you humbly, and as I typically am, I'm open-minded, I'm honest, I'm sincere and genuine. I went to you and voiced that I'm looking for work, anything, just something. And how, not only that, but how dare you offer to have counseling and presume that it's because there's something mentally deficient within me. Maybe I just have been like a miracle worker. Maybe I've just been clever enough to be able to go through life with as few resources as I have, and as my mom has, and she sacrificed a lot for me. How dare you just presume that there's something mentally deficient with me? Not, number one. Number two, how dare you prescribe something that is possibly or potentially about to screw up my mind further setting me back and inhibiting me and preventing me from living a healthy, normal life. And number three, it's way out of your job description to do that. And from what I've heard of this friend of mine, a number of other people had similar experiences. I don't know exactly what, but had similar experiences, and they didn't think much of it either. In other words, I hadn't been apparently the only one. He had been overstepping his bounds with them too. So he probably, the way I remember it, I think he had some kind of almost not crestfallen, that's too strong, just sort of defeated look on his face and just let it go. And we probably left and went on and drove home and so forth. but that stuck with me. And so after that point, as I've told that friend, I lost respect for him. There's a little bit of respect that I maintained that based on those earlier moments growing up, before I had the onus and the obligation to demonstrate my abilities, while I was still under the care of my mom as a child, he had moments of showing respect towards me and smiling, so forth. But once I was essentially an adult after college, I guess I was obligated to demonstrate that I was capable. And because I wasn't in his eyes, that made me seem mentally deficient and screwed up in some sense. And it's not just him, it's a lot of people. And I feel one driving thought in my mind, I mean, it's not the only driving thought, but I mean, one recurring thought in my mind has been demonstrating, like Luke Skywalker in Star Wars, demonstrating that I am capable and I'm smart. And that's what this Madonna, this is a very all-encompassing video, isn't it? That's what the message is in that Madonna movie. I'll come out and say this, that during college, I still had a crush on Madonna. I mean, sorry, let me rephrase that. I had still been nostalgic for this girl, Punky Brewster, from high school. And there was a void, and there was a loneliness and a frustration. And the more so in college, the more I read about Madonna and how she, apparently it's not as mythologically, it's not as mythological as a fairy tale as I've read about, where she just had some dollars in her pocket and moved to New York and just built up her career. Apparently she was smart enough to have things set up ahead of time, from what I've heard on a YouTube video from people who would be in the know. But anyway, I admired her for not just that. I admired her in general for her success and her clever wit and her intelligence. And a lot of people, I don't think, really gave her credit for that. And so I felt a kinship as fellow artists. And the same thing with Steven Spielberg. I felt a kinship with them. And the more alienated I felt, I wasn't living in a dorm in college. I commuted by bus to the campus and back home with my mom. I was still living with my mom, and I gave an appearance perhaps of somebody who didn't have resources, who wouldn't amount to anything in life. Basically, people can be very judgmental. Again, comment on anything I've said. Please comment on it. So I came up with this movie idea. What if somebody like me met somebody like her? Would she be able to see past that and see a smart, creative guy who deserves deserves a girlfriend, deserves companionship, deserves some kind of psychic bonding. Psychic meaning like a meeting of the minds that the two of us can come together and have something to talk about and share, so forth. It's not just fan worship. There's something more. It's kind of like meeting somebody you respect very much, like meeting someone that you've looked up to and respected, like a hero, personal hero, I guess. and I'm sure there are movies about that, and people have their own experiences. If you want to, you can mention if you've had a personal hero in your life, and if you ever got a chance to meet that person. I know one of my classmates. I was talking about this with one of my classmates, and he talked about a musician, and I think there was also a baseball player or sports player or something like that. But he's very much into music, and he's a very good friend. He's well, anyway. He's a very good friend, and he has a good head on his shoulders. And he said, if I have it right, he was able to meet this person, and I I don't want to go into it because I can't remember if it turned out well or turned out poorly. But if it did turn out poorly, sometimes the person in real life isn't the person that you form in your mind or want the person to be. So that's the major message or the theme I wanted to put into this Madonna movie project, which might never exist. So I was filled with that. So I can't remember exactly where I was going with this. I was going to college. You're right. I was going to college. So it's the same thing. So there's been this running thought in my mind of having to demonstrate that I am capable and so forth. And now I work 2 part-time jobs because one of the jobs they cut my hours back, forcing me to get a second job. But I was smart enough and capable enough to hold on to this other job too, get it quickly enough so I can stay in my apartment and keep all these things intact. When I moved, my mom died and I had to move out of the house quickly. I had a month to move out of the house quickly. It took a lot of stamina and a lot of cleverness and alertness and so forth to be able to do that, pull that off. And I think my mom, she was born in 1933, so she was a woman who was very smart and went into the sciences. And as this friend talked about last night, she must have gone through a lot of stereotyping and a lot of glass ceiling experience where she wasn't allowed to be able to do a lot of these other things. Plus, I've talked about this before, but she would hear voices. I mean, when I was growing up, she would hear voices, and she might have had a mental condition, in some schizophrenia, possibly. That's only my assessment of it, with no clinical background. But they would be critical voices, and they would be what you would call harassment voices, day and night. So through all that, I should get some credit for having put up with that. I'm 47. I'm going to be 48 this year, the end of this year, in November. And I put up with a lot. And I don't know if I'll be able to fulfill my dreams, like my life goals. So anyway, so that returns me to this man. In the past few years, I know because I was living as a matter of fact, in this apartment, and I moved around 2020. So, and this is January 2023. So somewhere in that time frame, probably 2020 or 21, I wrote him a letter. He's since moved off to another state. He's retired. And I wrote it out, like how I actually felt. And he responded back. I don't remember what he said, but he said something like, "I'm sorry," kind of matter-of-factly, like, "Oh, I'm sorry that you felt that way," essentially. Still wasn't a full return, but at least it was something, and at least he responded. And he's, I think, sometimes wished me a happy birthday, and I wished him, before writing this letter, I've wished him a happy birthday, and I made a conscious effort in those past years to put that behind me. But but now, especially after having talked with this friend last night, it reminded me there are a number of people that I went to for help, and I'm not blaming the world. I'm not in a frame of mind of blaming the whole world, but I mean, objectively speaking, I've sought out. I've gone to some friends and acquaintances and so forth for help, and either they couldn't help me as much as I needed, or they didn't want to, or whatever. But I fortunately, I've talked about extended family members, and I have they're cousins on one side of the family and cousins on another side, and our cousin and his wife on the other side, and I've been able to establish some kind of friendship, and hopefully it'll lead to something. And I hope that in the future that they'll be able. I understand, it's maybe a lot to ask for, but I understand. But and to some extent, I feel like I'm asking for something that a parent would give, and they're not necessarily in the same position as a parent. But I hope that at some point they can be able to help, step in and help. So I believe I've said all of I need to say about it. And again, if you have thoughts or your own comments on anything I've talked about, please comment in the comment section. And of course, the usual, like this video, please, and it helps as they say, the algorithms. And subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. If you like this content, what I've talked about in this video is very much the content that I want to promote. This encouragement of assessing your life and seeing, doing inventory, essentially, thinking through and assessing, different sides of what's happened, what experiences you've had in life, and trying to understand yourself as a person. What's your personality? What drives you? By the way, I haven't taken the Myers-Briggs personality test. I borrowed a book from the library that gave a little quiz, and it pointed me towards one of the 16 personality types. And aside from that, I just looked through all the personality types, and I think I'm pretty much on the mark with ENFP. That's extrovert, intuition, thought. Extrovert, intuition, feeling, and perception. At first, I thought I would be an introvert, but it seems that what drives me many times is being with other people. So it turns out that, from what I've read, that the ENFP is the most introverted of the extrovert personality types. So that says something. That jibes. So that gives you a little bit more about me. If you look that up, I think that almost describes me to a T. Anybody who knows me, you're free to comment, think if I'm on the mark or not. Okay, with that said, I hope you have a good rest of your day whenever you're watching this, and I'll talk to you next time. Thanks. Bye.